Please welcome the Senior Vice President, Global Head of Product and Engineering from PayPal, Bill Reddy. And the Chief Retail Strategist at Shop Talk, Sucharita Mulpuru.
Well, thanks for being here, Bill. Appreciate your time. And by the way, you got a promotion, didn't you?
That's right, yeah.
So Bill is now the COO of PayPal as well. So it has been a little bit more than a year since the eBay separation. Tell us how that's gone.
It's been really fantastic. I mean, one of the things that people talked a lot about as we were separating from eBay was, what that might do for us in terms of the world of partnerships and sort of the things that we could do as an independent company. And so a little more than a year later, we've had, some pretty fantastic results as an independent company. Made great progress on mobile products, those types of things. But importantly, we've redefined the way we work within the ecosystem. We've done major deals with card networks, Visa and MasterCard, most recently. We're working with tech platforms, whether it's Apple Pay and Android Pay or Facebook. We're working across a number of folks that many would have thought a couple years ago were competitors to us, and we're finding ways to work really well across the whole ecosystem, which is a big shift for us.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was looking at some of the logos that you worked with maybe a year ago, and that list was maybe 3 or 4 companies, and now it's well over a dozen, it seems like, including Facebook and Facebook Messenger, right?
That's right, yeah.
And there's a little announcement that you guys have at
That's right,
this morning. Do you
yeah,
want to
so
share
what we announced today, we've had a long-standing partnership with Facebook, and with Facebook Messenger as well. We've worked with them for quite some time. If you're familiar with the ability to hail an Uber ride inside of Facebook Messenger, that runs on our Braintree platform. But what we announced today is the ability for PayPal users to link to their Facebook accounts so that they can get communications from PayPal via the Facebook Messenger channel, which we think is really important because it's a great interactive channel, allows us to have a richer conversation with our customers. And then also, by linking Facebook and PayPal accounts, PayPal becomes a more relevant payment option across many of Facebook's commerce experiences. And so we've been in a number of those, but you'll increasingly see PayPal across the many Facebook commerce experiences.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I suspect that you contend with every day is how do you prioritize? And of all of the different companies you could have decided to make an announcement about today, whether Google or AT&T or anyone, why Facebook and why Messenger? What is your belief in that type of commerce?
Yeah, so we have contextual commerce, which has been talked about a lot more recently, but I think is sometimes not fully understood, is something we've believed in for a very long time. And in fact, if you go, I came into PayPal as the CEO of Braintree and Venmo. And one of the things that we bet really big on with mobile was not just that people would demand easy push-button buying experiences on mobile devices, but that we are really moving into an era of context-driven computing and context-driven experiences. And so what we believe is that as people move to devices that don't have great ability for input, you don't have a physical keyboard anymore, whether it's your mobile device or the browser on the dashboard of your car or a wearable, or sort of voice-enabled devices, those types of things. You don't have a great keyboard to go provide data entry. And so what we believed through that was that the ability for applications to know and understand a user were going to be increasingly important. And we think that consumers and merchants are going to meet one another in a lot of places other than the traditional checkout. And in those places, it's going to be really important to be able to make a fast connection between the consumer and the merchant so they can seamlessly transact. I think a few others have spoken today about how you're going to have people wanting to buy as they discover things. But in order to do that, you need to have really seamless ability to go transact and do so in a safe, secure way. And so the broader move towards contextual commerce has been very important for us. So Facebook and Messenger, you can think about this as PayPal, the most widely used trusted digital wallet in the world, partnering with the biggest social platform in the world to say, how do we go propel contextual commerce even further? And we've had a number of those. With Facebook, we partner with Pinterest on buyable pins. So we've had a number of things on that front. But we think that broader move to contextual commerce is something that when we're here at Money 2020, 5 or 10 years from now, we'll be saying, wow, that was really important, and it was just getting started sort of in these moments.
Is the success of WeChat, was that at all a factor that influenced you to go in this direction as well?
Well, I think, it's interesting. You have a lot of analogs to this type of commerce happening already. And some of those you see in some of the messaging platforms in China and Southeast Asia and those types of places. But I also think you have great analogs for it here that, if you look across social platforms, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or just a number of platforms, you see a lot of organic commerce activity already happening. And that may just be individuals posting a photo of, hey, here's this thing I'm selling, or here's this thing I made, or hey, here's the, I'm selling the baby clothes that my daughter just outgrew. Like, you see those examples all over the place. And I think right now is still sort of early days and very organic, but there's a lot of it happening already. And so I think the question really is, how do we as a payments ecosystem start to enable those things in a much more seamless way than what has been possible up until now, because users are there already, and that's where users are spending a ton of their time. So it just makes sense that where people spend their time, they're ultimately going to end up doing their shopping and buying in those places where they're spending their time.
Sure. One of, you talked about seamless and frictionless commerce has been a recurring phrase used over and over again. One of the, I think, overlooked success stories at PayPal has been OneTouch. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how OneTouch is going, and is that really one of the things that can potentially unleash commerce on the mobile web?
Yeah. We certainly have not overlooked it, and our customers haven't overlooked it. So PayPal OneTouch
now, it's like more than
30 million plus consumers, and we just took it out of beta a little more than a year ago. And so in the course of a year, especially if you put it in context of, there's been many attempts to go create new digital wallets, new mobile buying experiences. There's been tons of those, and to see one that in a little over a year has had 30 million plus consumers actively using it is pretty unheard of. And importantly, tied to why those consumers are actively using it is that we've enabled it for more than half the Internet Retailer 500 without those merchants having to do any work whatsoever to get it. It's just part of what they automatically get with PayPal, and part of the power of the PayPal platform, where we can control the experience end to end. And for those that aren't familiar with PayPal OneTouch, it is a, as the name would imply, a one-touch mobile buying experience, but it doesn't require any passwords, no fingerprints, and it works across devices, across platforms, across operating systems. And so for the 30 million plus consumers that are using PayPal OneTouch today, no matter what platform they're using, when they want to go transact with one of the several million merchants that are on PayPal OneTouch, they're going to have the same great push-button buying experience. And as part of ComScore did a study of PayPal versus other buying experiences, and PayPal's conversion rate was nearly twice that of the closest sort of new digital wallet, and almost a full 2 times the standard checkout. And so you see users demonstrating through their behavior that they're demanding those types of push-button buying experiences. So we're not surprised to see that it's become the most rapidly adopted product in the history of PayPal, which it is. But we think there's lots more of that to go. We've enabled it in 200 countries around the world. And of our 15 million merchants, we're approaching a third of the way through our 15 million merchants. So it's something that we're enabling really rapidly, and we do think it has the ability to, really change the way consumers interact with commerce on their mobile device. Because right now you have, depending on which sort of third-party research you look at, somewhere between 60 to 70% of e-commerce shopping is occurring on mobile devices, but for purchasing, you have far less, somewhere between 10 and 30%, depending on which research you look at. And so you would expect that over time, well, of course, the shopping and purchasing should be happening at the same rate. People are just waiting for the buying experiences to catch up. And we think this is a huge step forward with PayPal OneTouch to go really rewire the buying experience across a broad swath of the ecosystem. And so we're off to a great start, but we've got lots more to go.
Sure. And OneTouch is obviously primarily for mobile commerce. The one area where there's been so much talk and energy around is the mobile device in the physical store and that mobile transaction, the ability to really unleash the mobile wallet. However, mobile wallets still are a small percent of overall physical store transactions. Why, Bill, has it not had more success?
It's interesting. This is, so my first Money 2020, like 5 years ago, I remember coming here then as CEO of Braintree and telling people that, you know, we were doing mobile payments, and they said, "Oh, you mean you're doing tap to pay?" And I say, "No, not tap to pay." And they say, "Oh, you mean like plug a dongle into a phone and swipe a card?" And no, not that. We think it's about e-commerce on the mobile device. And right about the time I'd say that, people would like go walk off and talk to somebody else, because nobody sort of really thought that's what was going to hit first. Because at that time it was dollar downloads and ringtones was sort of the only thing people bought. And so the reason I didn't sort of think that in-store was the right first use case then is really that, you know, consumers adopt solutions to pain points really quickly. They adopt new experiences really slowly. And I think if you look at the in-store experiences that have succeeded over the last few years, it's generally been because they solved some material pain point for the consumer, right? If you take like the Starbucks app that everybody cites, people don't use the Starbucks app because they didn't want to swipe a card. They use it because there's a really great integration of loyalty and rewards, and I get my 10th cup of coffee for free automatically. And so it solved a pain point that the user didn't have to carry around that little punch card anymore. You know, the same thing for like order ahead apps and those types of things, or Uber solved a huge pain point. And so if you look at the physical world experiences that have taken off, they solved a real pain point. And I think now you're going to start to see more and more retailers starting to say, okay, how can I use mobile to solve a pain point, wrap my value prop around the consumer experience, and where is mobile uniquely able to do that? And so I think things like, you know, order ahead, loyalty and rewards, those are places. But you also have some other really interesting new ones, you know, that are just now starting to really make themselves evident, like, you know, buy online, pick up in store, where, you know, Home Depot came out and spoke publicly about they now see 40% of their e-commerce purchases are buy online, pick up in store. And so the e-commerce style experience is starting to come into the store. It's just coming into the store in ways that deliver value props to the user versus, you know, necessarily saying, hey, you know, tap instead of swipe, or tap instead of dip. And so I think, you know, while it's been a sort of long and difficult road for in-store, I think now it's starting to become evident, okay, here's the things that are resonating with consumers, and I think that's, you know, instructive to all of us in the industry to say, well, how do we all go do things now that can make it so that merchants can more easily deliver their value prop, you know, to consumers via a mobile device. And that may be different from one merchant to the next, but I think that part is clear, that there's going to have to be some value prop there for the user to really feel compelled to go use that mobile payment method versus just, you know, swiping or dipping, which is generally pretty easy for the user.
Let's talk a little bit about Venmo. So there will be a new product called Zelle, which is described by some as potentially a Venmo killer. Share with me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I've been hearing about Venmo killers for years now. And, you know, the thing is, as others have introduced services, you know, we've seen that Venmo just continues to grow and do well. And, you know, there's been...
The merchandise volume is how big now on Venmo?
Almost $5 billion last quarter, so on nearly a $20 billion run rate annually for Venmo. And that's from a standing start just, you know, about 4 years ago.
Less than $1 billion a few years ago, right?
Yeah. Well, 4 years ago, it was a, you know, few thousand users and nobody had ever heard of it. You know, I think the really interesting thing and what actually makes me excited about Zelle and others coming into the space is, you know, we all have a common enemy in cash. And so, you know, there's $25 trillion of commerce in the world, right? And so when you hear that number that, you know, Venmo's doing $20 billion annually, or that PayPal did $280 billion last year, you know, that's barely more than 1% of the world's commerce, and you still have the majority of the world's commerce occurring in cash. And so the more people that are coming together and helping to inform users that you can do these things digitally, you can do them electronically, I think the better that is for the whole ecosystem. And bank-based P2P has been around for a long time, and there's been some good success stories there. And so seeing sort of maybe the next iteration of bank P2P, I think it's good to help move the ecosystem. But even as banks and others have continued to refine their P2P, Venmo and PayPal have both grown tremendously. So I think it is a huge ecosystem where there's lots of ability for many, many people to play, and users are going to choose the experiences that make sense for them, right? And with Venmo, a defining part of the Venmo experience is the social aspect of it, the news feed. And we are by no means a social company, but that part of the experience is defining for Venmo. And you still have the majority of Venmo users engage in the social experience that are sharing payments, viewing the news feed, those types of things. And so I think for users that want that kind of experience, they are deeply loyal. And you typically find, if you go on a college campus, and there's many surveys that have cited this, and you ask students, if you could only have 3 apps on your phone, what would they be? Venmo is almost always in that top 3 list, and part of it is because it's a great mobile payment experience, but part of it is because there's a great social experience wrapped around it as well, which sort of gets to the earlier point around us as an industry thinking about what are the value props that actually get users to engage, and there needing to be something more than just payment. In Venmo from the very beginning, social was native to it, and something that we thought was part of the value prop, where there was just, for person-to-person payments, an organic conversation happening, where if you were splitting the tab at dinner or splitting drinks at the bar, there was a conversation that had happened about that. And well, why don't we just capture that right in the same line as the payment, and let users engage on that? And so, again, I think it's great to see others coming into the ecosystem. Lots of room for many to grow, and I think Venmo has continued to grow faster and faster as others have come in, and hope we'll see that continue.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about international. And you made an announcement about Alibaba and a pilot program with some of the merchants through Alipay there, or AliExpress. Mm-hmm. What is your thought on PayPal's ability to really make inroads in the Chinese market? Is it more through cross-border? Because it sounds like that's what that is, versus taking on Alipay, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. We're, to my points earlier on us finding ways to work together with the ecosystem, we're working in partnership with Alibaba and helping to enable a lot of cross-border trade. And so, domestic China is, very difficult for many payments players. But part of the strength of the PayPal business is that we're in 200 markets around the world, and we have nearly a full 25% of our business is cross-border trade. So these are transactions that are really, really difficult to enable, that we're able to enable in ways that others find very hard to do. So, us saying we can help, whether it's a buyer in China trying to connect with a merchant they're buying from elsewhere, or a consumer outside of China trying to buy from a Chinese merchant. Those are transactions that we can enable really, really well. And saying that we'd work with one of the best players in the market in Alibaba, is indication that we're very willing to go help partner across the ecosystem to enable commerce to happen.
Sure. Why do you think that mobile, particularly in the United States, has yet to be the primary computing device? That's something that you mentioned earlier. Is something that it has happened already in a number of markets, but it's still a little bit slow here.
Well, I think it depends on how you define primary. And so I think if you define it by time spent, you'd say mobile has become the primary computing device here. If you define it by other activities, you say, well, hey, maybe we're not quite there yet. But I think the really interesting thing, and I think this is somewhat of what you're getting at, is that we talk about mobile becoming the primary computing device here in the US. In many places in the rest of the world, it's the first computing device.
And the only one.
And the only one. And so, I think that is a huge opportunity for all of us as well, that, if you look at the enablement of people around the world to go transact, to go participate in e-commerce, that is changing in very, very fundamental ways. But what's going to be required of us as a payments ecosystem is very different as well, because mobile's the first computing device in many of those markets, the only computing device. And so when we talk about here in the US or in other developed markets, users moving to seamless push button experiences and demanding that you need to mobile optimize and deliver great mobile buying experiences in many markets around the world, they're starting with that. And so if you don't deliver that, you're just you're not going to be able to to deliver transactions in the place where the user's spending the vast majority of their time. So I think a huge opportunity for all of us.
Great. And that brings us to the end of our 20 minutes. But thank you so much, Bill,
thank you
for
so
your
much,
time.
and great to see all of you. Thank you.